Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much, our able technical chair, Dr. Kelvin Chima. So without wasting much of our time, I'll quickly call on the publicity secretary. It's no other than Dr. Oge to please brief us on some safety rules so that we know that we are safe for this meeting. Okay, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. You're all welcome to this technical meeting. So I will just start with a brief introduction on the safety information. So I would like us to ensure that we are safe and we are in a safe and secured location. That is finding a comfortable spot to sit and focus without any distraction, and make sure you have a good lightning and stable internet connection. So you keep in mind that our great organization takes safety and security very seriously. So you should be mindful of that and avoid sharing any confidential information with any unauthorized individual. If you have any safety concern or any question, do not hesitate to speak up or inform us. So you will find at the control panel, the hand raise icon, you can signal when you have a question or comment. You use the mute button, ensure that you mute yourself, that you mute the microphone to avoid any background noise or distraction. And then you can use the chat button to, send any message across or ask your question, and you will get a feedback as soon as possible. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, our able PS, for that wonderful safety rule. So we are good to fly. So I will just take us through some few introductory remarks so that we can get really into the meat of this meeting. Tunde, please, you have the control. Yeah, Tunde, still on the slide. Just move to the next slide, please.
Okay.
All right, that's the coordinator opening remark. Next. So once again, you're welcome. Usually we start up with this slide that shows the array of our ESCOs. So some of us that may be joining us for the first time, we've received calls from people just joined the chapter newly, having had of such technical meeting. It's good to meet your ESCOs. Please, next. So we have Dr. Princeton Dean, that's myself, the coordinator. We have the beautiful ladies. The first is Dr. Adobe Okeke. She's on this call. She's the deputy coordinator. And we have also Dr. Augustine Chimuko. He is the general secretary. The beautiful lady that just gave us the safety brief, Dr. Ogechukwu Onyemesili. She is the publicity secretary. Earlier on, we had an opening prayer from our editor-in-chief, who I call the technical chief. He is Dr. Kelvin Chima. We also have Dr. Austin Okonkwo. He is our financial secretary. And we also have Dr. Ibenemek Ikechukwu, now an associate professor So he is the treasurer of the chapter. On the YP, Young Professional angle, we have Dr. George Okeke coordinating it. We also have our backbone, and he is on the call. And he is a member of the advisory council. He's no other than Professor C.S. Nwajide. Next slide. So a lot of people, have saddled us with a lot of questions. What is in there for us in NAPE? It's good to reiterate this. Earlier on, we had a video that was played, but it may interest you to understand once you're a member of NAPE, you get the opportunity to showcase your finds, be you in the industry or in the academia. You can publish your work, you can present it, also in conferences. You can join the editorial board of NAPE. They work in and out of season. You can also join some committee and subcommittee within the conference planning committee. As we speak now, it's on. Feel free to reach out to either any of the executives. You'll be directed well on how to join. You can also participate in continuing education series like we are doing today. We are open to speakers. We are open to sponsors to join us. Play your part in NAPE. There's always room for you to advertise your company, to show what you have. You can also join short courses that enlighten you. We keep learning. There are a lot of short courses that will be coming up, and we'll still be open for more, especially as technologies and event changes in the drilling space and even in the academics. You can also apply for grants. It may interest you to know some of our students are winning grants. For instance, within the Oko Owerri chapter, recently, we have 2 students that won the best petrophysics students in the University of Nigeria. And that is being sponsored by one of us, Dr. Tony Ofoma. He is the vice president. And these students will be receiving this award. They just graduated. And that award is tagged for the best petrophysics students. And there are also awards in Ibadan across the nation. So why don't you meet up with the UAP? You can reach any coordinator and get to know about this and know how well to apply for these grants in AIDS. You can also prepare yourself to join or participate in the upcoming NAPE conference. You can also win several awards. If you have served us very well, if you have served NAPE very well, you have the opportunity of being awarded some of the prestigious awards. You can also go in for fellow. We have a lot of fellow in this chapter, and we need more. Once you have served within up to 15 years and what have you, the criteria are well spelled out. You have opportunity to enjoy the benefits in NAPE. So let's take advantage of this. But you cannot take advantage of this if you have not paid your dues. Please do well to pay your dues, annual dues, so that you can really enjoy this. Please, next slide. So over the last year, Oko Owerri came on board last year. And it's good to, take a look back to what happened last year quickly. This was the first we had last year, gas utilization opportunities. We also, by Engineer Sonny Okoye. This was quite interesting. It was hybrid, and we had a lot of participants. Next slide, please. This was followed by Professor Ogbonnaya talk on critical environmental impact signatures and footprints in a consistently evolving energy region. This also went ahead to have a part 2 of it in the Abuja chapter. Next slide. We also listened to one of our very own. You can't talk of outcrop geology without bringing him on board. Professor Nwajide, who talked on analyzing hydrocarbon system on the basis of outcropping ethnologues. It was quite interesting. We also had our very own JB, he took us into the energy transition journey and role of geoscientists. Don't worry if you actually missed some of these things. The good thing about NAPE, we have a way of documenting every of our meetings. So the presentation slides, the recorded videos are available. All you need to do is to reach out to the coordinator, reach out to the secretariat. You will get to, I will even have our links on YouTube and also in the chapter, Facebook and Twitter pages. So you can go ahead and listen to this. Next slide. So today, we'll be looking at the synopsis of exploration well failures in the Niger Delta, the risks, mitigations, and false confidence. And we have no other to talk through this, if not the head of specialist geosciences and exploration discipline. That's the lead in Shell Nigeria, Olusegun T. Obilaja. I have to tell you, this is gonna be an interesting presentation. If you're driving, you may need to park somewhere. If you're in the office, you may grab a cup of tea, sit down, relax. In no distant time, we'll call him on board. Next slide. So I would like to call on the president. The president is in the meeting, but to good at thing, we have the president-elect, Mr. Abiodun. I think if he's on the call, he can speak on his behalf, but if not, we could proceed once he joins the call. We can have his remark. The VP, there are a lot of, clashing meetings, but once any of them, both the VP, Dr. Tony Ofoma, or Ogundobi, the president-elect, once they join us, they can talk to us. Next slide. So on this juncture, I would like to introduce the chairman of this occasion. He's not new to us. In fact, he's a member of the family. He is the CEO of DigiConnect, and he was the former NAPE president. He has been in this business of continuing education, and he encourages on in every ramification. I'm talking of no other than Mr. Abiodun Adesanya, a fellow of NAPE. Sir, you are welcome in today's meeting.
Thank you very much, Princeton.
Thank you, sir. Without wasting much of our time, I will yield the floor to you.
Thank you very much.
Just to today's meeting. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to have been invited to come and chair this very, very interesting meeting and a very important topic. We are all explorationists, and we all know the importance of today's topic. I will go straight to introducing the guest speaker, Olusegun Obilaja. It's earned his first degree in geology from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, where he was named the best graduating student in 1991. He is an experienced exploration geoscientist. He has an MSc in plastic sedimentology and petroleum geology. With more than 25 years industry experience in play-based exploration, regional evaluation, prospect identification, maturation, risk, and volume assessment. He is regularly involved in end-to-end value creation for exploration discovery through appraisals, resource booking, and notional development planning. An experienced coach with strong passion for delivery and an exploration technical assurer level 2, tier 2 in exploration in Shell. His working experience spans the extensional system of onshore Niger Delta, the translational to compressional structural systems of deep water Nigeria, to pre-salt carbonate platform systems of South Oman Basin. He is a proven hydrocarbon finder with a number of successful exploration wells in his experience in the Niger Delta and Oman Salt Basin. To effectively deliver on his role requires good stakeholder management, JV partners, regulators, the government, and as well as proper internal alignment with decision executives. So this is Segun Obilaja. He will be talking on the topic, the synopsis of exploration failures in the Niger Delta, risks, mitigations, and false confidence. And I know that as explorationists, this is just a very important topic to listen to. As much as possible, I have mobilized as many people as I can to please come and listen to this very important presentation. So without much ado, Olusegun Obilaja, you're most welcome and you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairman, for the day. And good morning, everyone. I would like to quickly start sharing my screen.
Yeah, you can go.
Please let me know once you see my desktop.
Okay, we can see your screen.
Good.
Yeah, I can see it.
So let me make it a bit bigger so that we can go. It's now in a presentation mode. Is it still clear?
Yeah, very clear.
Yes, it's very clear, sir.
Thank you. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's session. As introduced, my name is Segun Obilaja. I'll be speaking on the synopsis of some of our wells that have failed in the past, exploration wells, particularly talking about the risk we faced, some of the mitigations we used, and particularly as to why we tend to have some confidence that it's going to work. And the reason I put that in is because I've noticed that even till today, we still have this notion that because it's a matured basin, when we put a well, an exploration well, everybody expects it to work. Because, as they say, Niger Delta is a prolific basin. So why should we drill dry well? So I thought, okay, let's put this together and let's talk about it. So I start with our normal disclaimer from Shell. However, before that, I would like to state clearly. So today, I will talk in this outline. I will show some of the well failures, a little introduction to the background, and the historical trend of how we've evolved in the Niger Delta. I also talk about the failure mechanisms, as well as show some examples of where those have happened in the past. And we will also talk about what was the experience and why did some of these wells carried a high cost pre-drill as explorers. But I will want to upfront say that while the discussion is going on, please note, at the end of the day, I'm going to give acknowledgement. But upfront, I would say this is a collation of quite a number of work of a number of people in Shell. The examples are principally for work done in Shell over the past 20, 25 years. And some of the audience here today, once they see this slide, I'm sure they're going to smile because they will see their handwriting on the wall. I've seen Dr. Ijedawe in the crowd. I've seen Professor Nwajide. I've seen, I think, okay, I would have Dr. Ladipo is there. So they'll probably smile when they see some of the slides. Well, the idea today is this. Mention some of the failure mechanisms, show some analogs that we've seen before, but focus on why it happened, such that as explorers, we are able to guide against all things in our places of work, because after all, this is an association of explorationists. We want to share our own knowledge so that when we go further into various exploration work in the future, we have this at the back of our mind. But at the same time, what are we not going to discuss today? We will not go into specific of the wells or the prospects, because that's really not the idea. So you will not see any well name. You will not even see where the wells are coming from, except for those who have a good recollection of where those wells are. So because it doesn't really matter. What matters is what was the result and what did we do about it? Or what can you do to avoid it in the future? The other thing we are not going to be talking about is business things, business discussion around those wells or around those prospects. What happened to the company? What did the company do? It's not really necessary for this talk. And lastly, this is not a topic on technical de-risking methodology. So this is not a KY session. Neither is it a session on sequence stratigraphy, because those are tools that different companies have that they know how to do very well, that I know you guys know how to do very well. So we will not go into that. We will only go to things that happened that made it fail, what we thought was the solution at the beginning before we drilled, what we later saw, and what we can learn from it. That way, our attention is focused on what we are here to discuss today. Briefly, I'll talk about the background, and I won't waste too much time. When we started exploration in Nigeria back in 1936, up to the first well in Oloibiri, what you see is up to now, we've done almost 1,500 wells in Nigeria, maybe about 1,300 in the Niger Delta. But what you see is that at the beginning, the success rate was not that high, but gradually it became better. And I guess at some point, we started feeling we have enough data, we have enough knowledge. So in most recent times, you start seeing exploration wells with pulse of 80, pulse of 85, and you drill such well and it is dry. We'll probably discuss why that is happening, but I will show a little bit of that as well. And the reason for this increase in confidence we also show is mainly because if I have a chart that just shows that a little bit. But before I go to that chart, this is just a visual of the gamut of exploration wells in the Delta. So we talk about 1,400 or 1,300 in the Delta. So you see, it covers the Delta very well, from the onshore to the shallow water to the deep water. We have enough spread of exploration wells. So this is an attempt to show how we have evolved in the 60s, 70s, to the 90s, to the 2000s, where in the initial stage, our reason for failure were a bit different. We are failing because of things like no 3D, 2D seismic. And we move gradually to when we have 3D seismic, so we will eliminate issues with positioning, issues with defining the subsurface properly. But then other issues started cropping up, things like force seal analysis, force seal failure. And then with the onset of things like with better understanding of sequence stratigraphy, better QI tools, what you then see is that our pulse, our probability of success started to increase again in the 2000s. And to the recent stage where our reason for failures tend to have different now. Now we are talking of things like very high pressure sequences because they are very deep. We are talking of very difficult sand fairway mapping because we are very deep. So we are now dealing with deeper sequences. We are looking for stratigraphic traps. So the geology is now coming back much more stronger in play. So what you see is that over time, the reasons for expression failure have changed, just as technology has also changed to match them. But in summary, I wanted to start with this slide. Say, okay, so I looked at all the analyses that are on the table for me, and I said, okay, we could see 6 reasons why our exploration wells have failed in the past, over the past decades. And for those 6 reasons, that are clear-cut mitigation factors that will be used in the Delta. And I'm sure every company has every method to do this mitigation. So I'll start from the first one, which is sometimes well mispositioning, or what we used to call non-valley structural test. So your well is just off structure completely. That used to happen a lot. And with the advent of 3D seismic, with the advent of 3D seismic with better velocity analysis, with better georeferencing tools, we have progressed significantly from that. As a matter of fact, there are some tools these days. In fact, some of the seismic interpretation tools we use these days will not even allow you make such mistakes. I will get into that later. The second item will be trap failure. It's also very, very common. But in various companies, in various institutions, we have methodology to manage that. Fossil analysis that can be done in 1,000 different ways by different companies, calculating shear guard ratio, doing proper juxtaposition risk analysis, sometimes going as far as doing paleostatic reconstruction or understanding the nature of fault or the history of fault to understand whether a trap will work or fail. The third method is seal failure. Sometimes we've seen where seal fail. And again, different companies have different ways, and I'm sure we do understand various methods that are specialists that handle that. Topsy fracture gradient can be calculated. We actually could do minimum shale stress analysis to see, is this shale strong enough to actually seal the kind of columns I'm putting into this prospect? Yeah, we've seen that happen, and we have method to do this stuff. So I have these 6 methods, but when I look at the 30 minutes that I have, I know that it may be difficult to go over the whole 6. So what I've done is to say, instead of overcutting what I'm going to discuss, let me take them at least into some reasonable detail. I know I can handle the first 3. And if after the first 3, we see that we are run out of time, it could be a place to wrap up for now and call it another day when we can come back and discuss the remaining 3. Or I could still push it for that, depending on how I look at my time, just to show that depending on how it goes today, we see how far we can push it. But again, just to say, we will not be talking about the content of the right-hand column, because the content of the right-hand column, you all know it. Every company has different ways of doing it. We will only be talking as to what did we learn, what can we do, how do we avoid a reoccurrence. That's what we'll be talking about mostly in this 30 minutes presentation. So I'll start with the first one, which is the mispositioning and non-valid structural test. So these are cases where we've done all we can do in the subsurface. We know where we want to drill, and we drill the well, and the well is dry. And then when we then look at it again, we realize that it's because where we thought the well was going to be was not where we drilled the well. So I made a call to my geomatics friend. Can you give me a practical demonstration of how this happened? And he came back with this, which is very, very practical. So we took a particular location in Garan. So we said this location, the longitude and latitude is this value. From in space, georeference in space. And if you do not clearly define whether you are dealing with a milled bed referencing system or a west belt referencing system, and the well engineering team got it mixed up. So you give somebody a particular longitude and latitude. It's supposed to be in the west belt, but the well engineering team assume it's in the mid belt. What happens is immediately that happens, this particular location changes to this, 4 kilometers away. And this has happened before. So you think you're actually drilling a structure, everything is correct, your mapping is correct, your amplitude is there, you drill the well, it is dry, you then later realize that, oh, the locationing team did not realize that the long lat that you gave them was in the west belt, and they used the mid belt CRS. And that could cause a 4-kilometer difference in where you place the well. How do we guard against this? One, the systems that we use these days, and that's what I was talking about. So currently, when I load a seismic in Shell, and I'm sure this happens in all software tools, it will not allow you go further until you decide what is the CRS. So you have to upfront state that my project is in the mid belt or in the west belt. And once that is defined, what then happens is that subsequently, every data you want to load into that project, the system does not allow you to mix match coordinate reference system. And that's a very good thing. And that's why I think this error has drastically reduced. So that when you want to bring in data or you want to export data from your project, most of the systems we use these days ask you upfront to define what is your CRS and what is the CRS of this project, so that you don't have mismatch of two locations. But as an explorer, I also give you this advice. When I was going to drill a well somewhere in Odiaba, and we've done all the work, I was sure my geomatics team had used the right location, and we were supposed to go first to the location inspection. So I took a flight with them. But before going, what I did was, I knew on my seismic where I want to place my well, and I could check on the seismic that from that location, there was a nearby well that was roughly 2 kilometers away to the northeast. So right in my head, I knew, look, when they get me to this location, I'm going to locate where my northeast is, and I'm going to look out for that wellhead to see whether I am roughly in position. The same thing I did when I was going to drill a well in the desert of Oman. So I located the first well in that location, and my new well was some kilometers away, but from the direction of the driving, I knew I had to pass in front of this wellhead. So I told the driver, so guys, when we get to this well one, can you point it out to me? Why? Because I want to use that well one to locate myself into the new location they are taking me to. That was my own check as an explorer. So despite I knew the system is good, the system now has a second layer of control, but if you are opportune to go to the location during the inspection, during the DLR, please, as an explorer, use every available tool to you to also reorient yourself as to this location I've been brought to. Yes, it looks like where I wanted to drill. That is one learning point that I think we can always use. But that's if you have the chance to go with the team for inspection. Sometimes it's not possible. And I just wanted to show that that can happen because, okay, another reason why we could have mispositioning is just in those old days when we used 2D data, the illumination was just not as good as this. So you can actually pardon why a lot of old wells did happen. So what I just did is to take one picture of a 2D seismic, and I look for the similar location on 3D seismic. The 3D I got was much bigger, but I could put a box around where this 2D seismic was. So this is the 2D, and this small box was just around the 3D taken decades later. And you could actually agree that the illumination is day and night. It's not the same thing. So you can understand why this mispositioning could have happened with 2D data.
Hello, Shagun.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you right-click with your mouse and go to laser pointer?
Oh, good. Beautiful.
And then, yeah, so that we can.
Can you see it now?
Yes, go ahead.
Good, good. So, but also, I also want to point out some of the examples where we have used 2D data to drill some wells, and these are wells drilled in the early 70s that are turned out dry. So I took a particular section of our work where we drilled the wells. The first 2 wells were based on 2D. Then we waited for some years to acquire 3D. And the third well was a completely different story. And this is one of them. So we did the first well on 2D, not on this seismic, on 2D seismic. So I want to say one thing. So assuming this well, if it's just assume that the structure, the accumulation is not a very big accumulation, you can easily have missed the crest of the structure. So this is the first well in that sequence. I'll go to the second well in that sequence. So this is the second well in that sequence. It's a very straight well, and it missed quite a lot of what will have been a potential target because, again, of illumination. I wanted to use this so that you could see the big difference between using 2D and a 3D seismic. The third well was some good years after the first 2 wells. And you could then see that because the picture was much clearer, we could see actually where the DHIs are lining up behind a fall. Then the third well was done as a scuba. And this was the well that actually opened up that field. So the point is, when we drill on 2D, the illumination was just not clear enough. And we could place our wells thinking we are in the right place, but when the 3D data came in, we are able to rightly illuminate and rightly place our wells. But if you look at that, this is now, so it's because now we have 3D data, it's a problem that has really been greatly resolved. So I'll go to the second point and the third point on my agenda, which is trap and sea failure. I have to combine the two because really they lead to one another. So let's start with the trap. I put it up this one first to explain something. So we have a well here, which is multiple hydrocarbon bearing layers, multiple hydrocarbon bearing. Another well here, multiple hydrocarbon bearing. And you could see that most of these hydrocarbon bearing reservoirs are easily mappable into these new blocks, easily mappable. You can take them and correlate them into the new blocks. And you also see that there are some faults. Yeah, there are some faults that separate them. So on this well, before we drill it, on these sequences, this one below, we were pretty confident about it. Not because we have a lot of wells around that have penetrated the same reservoir with hydrocarbon. But when you take a very close look, if you look at the horizons as we map them, the throw on these faults between the new area and the wells we built are not that much. But that was not enough to say you shouldn't drill a prospect. Why? Because in the Delta, we've seen that even little throws do seal sometimes. So that was not enough to say stop drilling this well. But let's take a look again at something like that in MapView. So take a situation whereby we have hydrocarbon bearing field, in fact, producing field in the eastern side of a prospect. We do have some hydrocarbon producing field on this side as well. And then we have a prospect here in the middle with a beautiful structural conforming amplitude. As a matter of fact, that amplitude is better than what we had in the producing field. From the data, pre-drill, we could actually say this was the oil water contact, something like a flat pump. and we could say this was a gas oil contact. We drilled this prospect and it was dry, nothing. So what could be the reason? I mean, many points. One thing we later saw is one. Let me see whether that is in the next slide or if I hold on, please. Okay, so this is showing me better. So what you see, there was a well here in this amber ring. That well also was dry. But if you look at the structural trend of this prospect, why would you want to bias this beautiful trend with a well that is not in trend, but that was dry? So really, it was not too much attention was paid to that well. The fact was, we saw a field on the same fault trend, producing field, and our prospect even had a better amplitude. And that immediately made us throw away, well, let me be careful. So that immediately anchored our bias to the risking of that prospect. So it was easy to say, this prospect, it is a most definitely is going to work. And to tell you that it wasn't only just the operator's problem, we actually had a big challenge convincing the regulator to call that thing exploration. It was a big, because they believe it was just an appraisal of this field because it was too obvious. But when we drilled that prospect, it was dry. And then we went ahead to do fluid analysis, fluid inclusion analysis, which actually showed that some hydrocarbon traces that passed through. So we just had very, very small residual in the system, which immediately then points to the fact that this fault failed. So yes, hydrocarbon was there, but that fault did not hold hydrocarbon. It migrated away from the system. How could we have known this before? There are many things we could have known. So KY these days have advanced, pretty much advanced than where we were when this well was drilled. So I'll just point to one thing. But remember, I said this is not a KY session. Neither is it going to be a sequence recovery session. But I just need to say this as a specific example for this case. So when we did a post-drill analysis, we actually did realize that the sand in question actually had what we call an acoustically hard response, which means unlike every other sand in that area, it was the acoustic of the sand was harder than a normal sand. What that then meant was if there should be hydrocarbon in that sand, the response should have been different. So this thing that we saw, if you had known that the sand is not the same thing as this sand here, you wouldn't have expected this kind of response from that rock. But as I said, we will not turn this to a KY session. I will come back to what we could have done in this case. And what we could have done is geology, which I can easily summarize. So what I mean is this. If we had taught geology and geology first, what we would have done is normal thing is what is this fault juxtaposed against? So if this fault is juxtaposed against something, what is it? Is it sand or shale? What is the response? What is the quality of the sand? What is the response of this sand acoustically? If we have understood it, then we could have then compared that with this well that actually failed earlier and see, is there any similarity in the responses of the sand in this new prospect and the one that failed and the one that worked? So you are in the space of geology before QI. And I think that is the message. Keep your analysis first in the space of geology. Understand the risk of that prospect in the space of geology. When you then think you have a prospect with this kind of risk, you can then bring in your QI analysis to say, does this support what I see geologically, or is it against what I see geologically? But I will come back to that in detail. This is another example of something that failed. In this case, it is a well that was targeting these deep opportunities. And if you look at this fault, and behind the fault, what you see is that it's a very chaotic seismic response. And mind you, again, this is a very, very deep prospect. And in the delta, we know that the deeper you go, the lower your net to gross, the higher your shale guard ratio. So there's every chance that these reservoirs we are going for are juxtaposed against shales, pretty much, against a very low net to gross system. To also boost our confidence on that, the kind of pore pressure we were expecting was between 0.7, 0.75. So logically, you will expect that if this fault is not sealing, how will you then build a very high pressure? So logically, you will say, definitely, this fault is sealing, and that is why the pressure was building. And since the structure is there, and mind you, we have already seen hydrocarbon in the shallower part of this prospect. So the hydrocarbon system is proven. The charge is proven. So under normal circumstances, you then see we carried a pause, a probability of pause of success of almost 80% for this reservoir. But we drilled it, and we also did not see hydrocarbon. Post-drill, we then look at, okay, so what happened? Not to boil it, so what really happened, what we felt happened was this fault that we are looking at. When you look at it in section, so if you look at my north-south line, this is the greatest, the strongest part of that fault. This is the strongest part of the fault. But in 3 dimensions, you see that that fault is not as, the throw on that fault is not the same as you go away. So the fault is getting weaker in its sealing capacity as you go away from that central part of the fault. So we thought, okay, could it then be that in 3 dimensions, at some point, this fault is not as strong as we thought in the middle, so it starts to leak. But 2 things that will do to you is it will probably make your hydrocarbon column smaller. So if that is the case, then it means that, okay, let's assume that the throw on this fault is only very strong up to this contour line. So what that means is that after this contour line, everything leaks. So that will probably have made your expectation smaller, but maybe won't have stopped you from drilling the well. And maybe it wouldn't have made the well a complete failure. Then there must actually be another reason why this could have happened. And we thought, look at it again. We start seeing some faults, smaller faults, away from the main fault that could have been a conduit to failure, to leakage. But more importantly, the reason we felt this went wrong was if we had looked at the three-dimensional throw of that fault and do a proper juxtaposition using all the scenarios. So at some point, the throw was 500 feet. At some point, the throw was 200 feet. At some point, it's less. So if you look at these reservoirs, when the throw is 500 feet, it's juxtaposed against a shale completely. But just assume that the throw is smaller, you start seeing that some sand will start juxtaposing against other sand. Again, bring back the geology and think of the possible scenarios of what could have gone wrong or what could go wrong and cause leakage before you attract a pause onto that system. So when we did analysis, we believe, yes, it is a trapping system. But another thing that we'll talk about is the topsoil. But I will come to that later. Because the question is this: When we drilled this prospect, it was still overpressure. So if it is still overpressure, how did it leak? Then there is a second school of thought that says, could it then be that we got to a point where the pressure was beyond the minimum stress of the topsail, broke the topsail, leaked the hydrocarbon, and then healed back the pressure, such that, yes, we see a present day 0.7, but at some point it was actually more than that. The column of the gas was too much for the shale, and it leaked out. And what we now met is residual of what was there before. Two possible reasons that we've seen. How do you manage that? I will also show down this line. So first, just to quickly summarize where I am currently. In the Delta, when you are prospecting in the shallower realm above 8,000, the deltaic sequence is quite sandy, and your trap sealing capacity is a bit low. Please do your due diligence on your juxtaposition analysis, on your fault seal analysis to see how strong is this fault and how much column can it hold. Don't say because you have seen amplitude, then is a sure banker that is hydrocarbon. Remember, in the Delta, we do have amplitude even in residuals. And that has been a cause of a lot of common failure. So juxtaposition analysis is quite important. Fault seal analysis is quite important. Again, because you are dealing with growth faults, even when you are in the mid to deeper part of the Delta where it is a low net to gross, it is important for you to understand that our faults are dynamic. So I just showed that when we look at the fault in 3 dimensions, so we look at the throw up and down, we look at the eave, and then we say, oh, the throw actually changes as you go this way. So this is the limit of what this fault can hold. But there is another dimension we need to bring in. When was the fault really active? It's important. And that's one I call the fourth dimension of the fault analysis. I think I can use this picture to help you. Beautiful. So this is an example of some wells we have drilled. And I want to use this just to show two things. These colored horizons are age markers. And we could use these age markers and the way they thicken and thins to determine the active phase of fault. So what you see is that this particular fault is active between the purple and the lilac time frame, and that is different from when this fault, for example, was active. Let me use a very good example, this one. So you could use your regional interpretation of time and depositional rate to say, when was this fault upon which the well you want to drill is dependent? Why is that important? When you have a fault that shows multiple phases of reactivation within your interval of interest, you need to check that properly, because just as your fault is a sealing mechanism, it can also be a conduit mechanism. When you realize that complicity, you then want to carefully analyze the risk you carry when your fault is multi-phase in terms of activity. Second, when your fault is reaching way up into the continental sequence of the Delta. Why is that important? So if you have a fault, I use this as an example again. So you see that this fault starts way deep, and by 2 seconds, this probably within your range of hydrocarbon sequences, this fault has died. So even if this fault is a conduit at some point, it is only remobilizing hydrocarbon within your active charge phase, active hydrocarbon system. That will be different from a fault like this. If this fault gets all the way to the shallow part, it's a possibility that rather than help your system, such a fault can actually be a leak path because it goes beyond your parallel sequence of Agbada. It has now gone into the continental sequence of Benin, and that may be a challenge. So you look for two things: the active phases of the fault, the important fault to your prospect or the well you want to drill, and how far up and down was this fault active, so that you know how to properly risk the well you want to drill. I think, yeah. So I just put this picture last minute because in the attempt to do that, and this is one of those pictures I'm sure that some of our elders in the group, when they see it, they will smile. So you could see that in the past, this is work done years ago. They already know the importance of this information. So they know that, look, tell me the active phase of this fault because it's important to your prospect. And when you know them, you then know that when you bring a prospect to my table, I need to find a way to properly risk them. So I come to the point of the topsoil. I remember the issue I said that we drill a well and the pressure is still high, which means that fault most probably is still sealing, because if not, we shouldn't be building pressure. So what could have gone wrong? A good example of what could have gone wrong is the seal, the top seal, the shale above your hydrocarbon sequence. Maybe it's not competent enough to hold it. And how do you mitigate against that? So I borrowed this from one of the work done by Adeshida Ade, where before he started, he said, look, so what is my regional seal in this area? And it happens to be what we call the 10.4 maximum for the surface. So the first thing you do is give me the regional thickness of this shale, which is very good. And then he says, look, where this shale is thick is a competent shale to seal. But where this shale is thin, it is not a competent shale. So if you bring a prospect on the table within an area where what is supposed to be your seal is not very thick, then you know the amount of risk you want to put on that already, irrespective of whether you have an amplitude or not. Amplitude will come in to help you, but first of all, understand the geologic risk you are carrying based on your topsoil. But it actually could get more complex than that. Like in the case that we drilled, where yes, the shale is pretty thick, so it is not the case of the shale not being thick. The pressure is still there. We made 0.79 psi, but we did not see the hydrocarbon. And one theory we carried was probably at some point we broke through the minimum stress of the shale and the hydrocarbon went away, and then it healed back and we're only meeting the residual. So what did we learn from that? There should be a way to calculate how much can the top shale hold. And a colleague of mine has a very, well, I believe this is across the income, it's across the industry. We all know how to do it. But this representation was given to me by one of my very competent experts. Say, look, you can actually take the top of your target, say the top of your target is at 14,000. We know what the minimum shale, minimum stress for the top shale should be. And let's say that is this green line, the minimum stress for the shale. And it's okay, I have a prospect at 14,000. If in my evaluation, my structure, my closure, I'm actually expecting a 2,000 feet of gas accumulation in that reservoir below the shale, what kind of pressure will that 2,000 feet of gas generate on the top shale? By the time we did that, so you put 2,000 feet of gas, that will take about 16,000. What you see is that the pressure that will be generated at the crest of your structure is beyond your minimum stress for the shale. So it's going to break that shale. So two things are going to be. It's either that you do not expect 2,000 feet of gas below that shale. Simple. Because physically, that shale will not be able to hold it. So it's that you get there and you see 800 feet, 400 feet, 500 feet, which that minimum stress could still hold, or you just don't see anything serious. We believe this could actually make a point and make a reason why we've had failure in overpressure sequences in this prolific Niger Delta. And I just believe that, I just hope that as explorers, as we go further in our exploration work, we put all these in mind. Okay, time check for me. So I think, as I said, I may not be able to cover this. So let me quickly wrap up where I am. I've done the first 3 points. By the grace of God, I'm sure we will have enough time to cover the reservoir, which is also a very interesting point, and that's really my own area of expertise, seriously. But we leave to fight another day. So I want to quickly just wrap up with, as an explorer, you want to do your next well. How confident should you be? How confident should you be before you carry that course of 90, 80? So I have one picture to show you. This is in one of the subsequent slides, which I cannot cover today, but I can summarize it. 2 wells that we drilled. The one to the right was the first well. The one to the left was the second well. When you look at it structurally, the one to the left is actually higher. It is a continuous level in seismic. So it's a continuous loop. There is no fault in between. It's just a saddle in between. When we drilled the first well, this is what we found. Beautiful, beautiful gas accumulation. And a normally, everybody we think when you go up the crest, you should, in fact, definitely this is there. You're only just trying to go and look for the contact, because you have 2 options. You can either do a contact here, a contact test here, or you come here and test your contact properly, because this is a continuous reservoir. So lo and behold, we did this second well and nothing. It's just to point to you how you could be so confident of something. And I asked myself a question, assuming we drilled this one to the left first and we saw water, I am 90% sure nobody will have gone to do this well, because this well is lower in structure than the one to the left. Now, the reason why this failed, I will have discussed that in the subsequent paper, but I think I will leave that for another day. But just look at this and see how things that can be very apparent to you may not be that real in the subsurface. There's something called a protected trap syndrome that could happen, so that even on a crest, things you see down the structure may not be available, may not be there because of pressure issues. Again, I bring back to your memory things that are so obvious that you think, as a matter of fact, this one should even be an exploration. This is just an appraiser. May not really be that. Again, bring back the geology. Again, part of the anchor bias that could happen to us in exploration. I will quickly show you this. So we had one well here. This is gas bearing. We had another well here, which actually is water. When you do the mapping of this structure, you see clearly is a continuous sand. So we propose another well on this second hump of the structure. So on seismic, what I'm saying is, we saw a well here, gas bearing, and if you take the structure to the left, that was a second culmination, and it's the same soft loop, it's going to understand. So we're going to drill another well here. But when we drilled the well, it was also water. It was then, but it was water, but with better sand, much bigger sand than in the first well, much bigger sand. It was then we realized that when you take a second look, detailed look at this seismic, you actually see what looks like a channel in between the two of them. It's just that the channel also is sand filled. There's a lot of sand in the system. But again, that then affected the sealing capacity of this fault. And again, that's probably a reason why that well failed. Again, geological observation, coming in very strongly before we jump into a very strong conclusion. So where do I wrap up with that? As I said, even when you have DHIs as explorers, the question should not be, how good should I put the pause because of this DHI? The first question you should ask as an explorer is, this DHI you are seeing, what else could have caused it? And that is it's now in my sum. Anytime I see a prospect on the table with amplitude, the first thing I ask whoever brings to my table is, okay, what else could have caused this amplitude? What else? So if my reservoir is better than what you think, could it have given me this amplitude even with water? If this is a hard shell on top of a harder shell than I think, or a hard sand, or whatever, could it have given me this kind of response? So if you start asking that question, it pushes you back to the geology. Because then you have to first of all explain geologically, what is my sand risk? What is my sealing risk? What is my trap risk? What is the juxtaposition? What is the risk that I will probably have blown my trap? If you have a confidence of 70% on that, then the DHI is either just going to confirm or say, go and look at it again. We shouldn't start from, yes, it is a DHI, it's a very strong confidence, and then we forgo the geological understanding. That is what I call the anchor bias. So please, if there's one thing we're going to go away with this time around, when you see DHIs, think first the geology, ask what else could have caused this apart from hydrocarbon. And I think there I will probably have to suspend and wrap up. But before I go, thanks to our partners in Shell. We all own this data together that we've used, but particularly to explorers also in Shell, both current and our past staff who have done a beautiful job to pull all this experience together that I'm just gathering to show. Thank you very much. And yeah, that's where I stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Segun. Thank you for such a beautiful delivery, a beautiful presentation. I think the knowledge you are sharing is very clear. I just want to briefly address the Owerri Awka chapter. Segun had told us that this is part 1 of 2. I want to strongly recommend that you start working on part 2 of 2 delivery, because that is almost inevitable that we will be requesting for that. That's number 1. Number 2 is that this knowledge will not be limited to, or this sharing will not be limited to the Awka Owerri chapter alone. Segun, please be prepared. Other chapters will invite you. Please be generous in your acceptability. I know your time may be very tight. Just look into it and be willing to share. But what I've listened to today, first and foremost, I'm not surprised by the presenter's ability to deliver. You all listened to his profile when I read it at the beginning. Best graduating 1991 student of UNN, not just of geology, not just of Faculty of Science, probably of the entire university. So,
no, of geology.
Of geology. Okay.
Yes.
So thank you very much. I think it's been a very fantastic delivery. Let me try and summarize what I've had, and you will please pardon me if I didn't catch everywhere that you have spoken about. He started off the presentation by first and foremost acknowledging other people that either mentored him or had worked in similar topic. Internally within Shell, he spoke about 2 very senior geologists. He acknowledged the presence of Dr. Jedawi, who is actually in this meeting. And he also spoke about Dr. Kenny Ladipo as well. He told us that while he will be sharing things that he got in the course of his work, he will not be specific to well names, he will not be specific to field names, and he will not mention any company name as well. He then went on to talk about the historical situation, telling us that Shell probably have drilled up to 1,500 wells in Nigeria, 1,300 of which are in the Niger Delta. And then he told us that the rate of success, despite the high prognosis, had been improving with time because of technological changes, advancements, improving with time because of increased knowledge that comes through that. He then went into why we have failures. Why do we have failures? Wrong positioning, issues with tracks and seal failures, and so on and so forth. He mentioned 3 key areas. So technology advancements, 2D versus 3D, better imagery, fault seal failures, knowledge of application of sequence stratigraphy, sand fairway, and so on, have systematically assisted in improving our understanding and mitigating the risks of failure. In wrong positioning, he specifically started off by saying that when you have the wrong CRS versus when you have, when you mismatch mid-belt in terms of positioning of your well, going from mid to west, when a well is supposed to be in the mid and you mistakenly apply that coordinate to west belt, you could be off. He cited an example where the location translates to about 4 kilometers apart. He recommended that, today's systems, you must mandatorily enter your CRS. And that is a very important point. So following that up with physical sighting and referencing to any feature that you already know should be beside the well that you want to sight, where that is possible is very important. And we know, of course, that 2D versus 3D, there has been better imagery. He went on to talk about trap and seal failures. He spoke about the fact that, your faults could be, could initiate a throw at a particular point. By the time you trace that fault laterally, that throw may have changed, leading to a juxtaposition issues. You could have a good sand to shale juxtaposition at one point, becoming sand to sand juxtaposition at another point. There's also the issue of depth. The deeper you go, the higher the shale to sand ratio, which obviously improves your seal. He mentioned mitigants almost everywhere that he has spoken about. There was the issue of overpressure breaking the seal. In this case, you're able to identify the seal, but because of overpressure issues, that broke the seal and your hydrocarbon leaked, was migrated to another location. Where your fault pierces through your reservoirs, especially in areas like where you have collapsed crest structures, your faults could act as conduits, leaking. Where these faults ultimately come into the continental sands, you may have your hydrocarbon gone. But where the mobilization, the location of your hydrocarbon is still within the Agbada sequence, you may still be able to see that. So faults that are deeply buried versus faults that come all the way to near surface has implications in the relocation of your hydrocarbon in that instance. He spoke about the different risks, the sand, the shale, the seal, the pressure risks that are associated. Like I said, I apologize if I didn't catch everything. But in a way, he has done a yeoman's job. He has given us a very, very good and very, very topical subject to look at. These are areas that are for the very senior professionals. They're pretty much aware of most of this. But for our young geoscientists, this is very, very impactful. This should be very, very impactful. And I think we have a lot to benefit from that. So without much statement, I just want to quickly add one very important point, which oftentimes is overlooked, and that is the human factor. The human factor. At DigiConnect, we have quite a number of experience in the area of wells that failed in the past, and we're basically doing a post-mortem review. We're able to identify a number of these. But one area that, or a couple of areas that oftentimes is omitted are the human factor. As you know, we have wells that have been drilled from the 50s, even probably earlier than then, into recent. And in the course of technological advancements, we've gone from analog to digital. And at a point in time, we do have well reports being typed by typists, by secretaries in our departments, in our exploration department, reports generated by. So when you write down as the interpreter or as the person leading the team a report, and you quote the coordinates X and Y, and you put that down in your report, and the person typing it mistakenly switch the digits. We've seen that before. A case in point, a well drilled in 1965. How did we know? We sent a GPS to the location of that well, and we were able to confirm, even though the numbers are not exactly accurate, but we were able to deduce very clearly that it was a digital, the digits were switched, you know, and it took us about 574 meters lateral shift in one particular direction. That is human error. Another one is that in going from analog to digital, we have paper logs, we have films, we have sepia, and these logs had to be digitized to be converted to last formats. The person doing the digitization and the amount of PAQC that goes with it is also a factor. We have seen where density logs was digitized and called resistivity. Somehow we have seen situations where while digitizing, because the logs were not particularly clear, at least the very one that was used, there was a switch. The digitizing technology itself has advanced, and we've seen situations of errors in those places, which is why we always recommend that we need to see the paper log as of the time the well was drilled, just to part of PAQC. So in other words, to embark on a project, especially a project that has been drilled before and all of that, it's always better to do PAQC in terms of looking at your logs, paper logs, sepia films, or if they've been scanned, and compare that with the last that you have loaded on your workstation, knowing fully well that it was at that point digitized. It's also important to, if you can, to send a GPS to the current well locations and georeference that with the positioning systems that was used for your 3D seismic so that everybody is in one belt. I mean, we've had this clear example of this mid-belt, west belt switch that created a problem. So those are my quick comments. I will yield the floor. Please remember, we have up till about 1 o'clock before we tee off this presentation. I'll yield the floor to those who have questions to ask. And I'm going to first and foremost read the ones that have been presented on the chart. It's been requested that if you have questions, you should please type them on the chat. So the first one is not even a question, it's just a comment by Dr. Adeigbe, that Segun, this is good presentation. Please remember you are coming to Ibadan, something of that nature. Ngozi Ulasi also says that thank you for a wonderful presentation. I wasn't able to view my screen from my end, my network. Okay, please, is it possible to get the slides? So that would be something for NAPE to respond to. Julius, again, they're asking if the recorded session will be uploaded. Okay, so that will be what the messages that has come through so far on the chat. If you have questions, please remember we need to have your name, institutions, or organization you represent, and your question very briefly, not more than 1 minute of asking or less, so that the presenter can quickly respond. Thank you. And remember to please remember to unmute to ask the questions. Thank you. Hello, anybody with questions?
Yes, K. Kano has a question, so I think we should let him unmute himself and present his question. Thank you.
Okay, KK, please go ahead. And then I think I see Benga Inyola as well. Ifeanyi is raising his hand. As much as possible, if you can type, go ahead and type, while anybody that is able to unmute to ask should please go ahead as well.
Can I be heard? This is K. Kano.
Okay,
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the wonderful presentation. I just wanted to say that we as explorationists, as geologists, should not beat up ourselves so much. I've been in this for over 45 years. I looked at some of the failures, and sincerely, with all the look backs, there are very few of those that I would say we wouldn't have drilled, even with the look back. I think where we fail is in managing the expectations. Indeed. And the expectations of our upper management when we are making proposals. It's good to point out the potential reasons for failure. But for each, almost for all of those, I will still have drilled them, but with the right expectation, such that if the result is a failure, then it's better managed. So I'm just saying, let's not beat up ourselves so much. Just look at what has been found in Nigeria. So we have done a good job. Thank you very much.
You are very right on that. That whether we will have drilled those wells, we will probably have drilled them. It is the communication of the risk that was important, so that the decision takers knew what they were going into rightly. You are very, very right on that. Thank you.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that was a very, very eye-opener, especially to those of us in the institution. When you are talking about geology, we know that it's very, very key. like our Oga KK have just said, I also agree with him. But in well location, and all this, our institution should be carried along. While I was in PetroChina, I discovered that there is synergy. The oil company is having some challenges. They go back to the institution. But what you have shown us today, we already have some of our students even working on geomechanical properties of some of these rocks that we may have, especially in the Niger Delta. These are just the issue. The institution should be carried along so that we cannot think outside the box. There is no way we can really know the problem from the oil company if we don't have this kind of presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof.
So we have a chat from Ido, the chairman. Please, can you read that out to the presenter? Thank you very much.
Professor Ido Olayinka, former VC of University of Ibadan. His chart is lucid presentation. Keep it up. Keep the hard work up. I haven't seen John Bosco himself say, Shegun, great presentation, and well said, KK. Risk communication to management is very important. Yeah, so those are the charts I have. I don't know if there are more. A number of hands have been raised. Let me see. Okay, I can't see who is raising their hands right now. So, but whoever should go ahead and ask that.
I'm raising my hand. Fine. I don't know if you can hear me, sir.
Yeah, fine. Please go ahead. I can.
Okay, sir. So please, thank you for the presentation. Honestly, I enjoyed it from the beginning to end, but I just have two questions to add. The fourth to the last slide and the third to the last slide. I don't know if you can go back to it, sir.
The first to the last, what do you say?
The fourth and third to the last.
So hold on quickly. Let me, this is the last but one. Just tell me when we get there.
Okay. Okay, this
This one.
Yeah, this one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm curious. The explanation you gave is quite clear with respect to the other well that was dry. So I'm curious, how did you manage to establish the GDT? You know, after finding out that particular well was dry, how did you establish that?
The gas down to.
Yes, sir.
Oh, so sorry. So the well you are seeing here is just a pictorial cut and place.
Okay.
So the well was drilled in a way that you could see the down to.
Okay.
And then
okay.
Based on that, what the well saw is how we got it down to.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, the third slide, where you have the fourth shadow stuff.
Which one is that?
I think the third slide, the next slide.
Oh,
the next one.
Sorry. This one.
There's a place I saw fourth shadow imprint. As a structure, I saw fourth shadow.
Okay, let me go small. Okay. Let's do this. So maybe you can see it better.
No. I think it's down, not up. Keep going down.
Is it a map or a seismic section?
Okay, the thoughts to the last before when working with DHR. Beware of a bias anchor.
What number?
Okay.
What number?
33.
Number what?
33.
33.
Yes, sir.
This one?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is I think from your experience, is there a possibility of like the foreshadow zone? Is there a possibility of like foreshadowing, projecting a structure, as a result of the foreshadowing. So why, even though there is no structure there, is there a possibility?
Of course, although that was not the problem in this case, but yes, that can happen, definitely.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, sir. And I hope that we can get this presentation slide for young professionals like us, so that it could be part of our library.
NAPI Secretariat will
Send it
handle the dissemination, yes.
Thank you.
Yes,
Morning.
please find the link
Morning
that's
is
your
already
YouTube.
shared
Thank you.
on the chat. It's on YouTube already. So after the
Yeah.
presentation, you can always go there and review. It's there
Yes.
on our YouTube page.
Yeah.
Morning, everybody. My name is Joe Ejedawe. Shegun, thanks for a brilliant presentation. I think you provided some details, that it just emphasizes for the modern explorationists, it emphasizes the amount of work you now need to do in order to risk your opportunity. Those good old days, you don't go to this level of detail in order to risk an opportunity. So I've seen many of these experiences now in consultancy. You see many of these cases that have occurred, not only in Shell, but in many other companies. But I'd like to point out too that perhaps one fundamental importance of a look back like this is that it helps you to do a play evaluation. At least from well record what wells have been successful, what play factors you need to consider for any particular play based on the results you have had before. It helps you in projecting predicting occurrences in the future based on what you already know. So that's one importance of this. Frankly, I'll be looking forward to your second part of this presentation, because that really complements this particular aspect, which is more of the superficial part. You started out by talking of especially the area where you talked about the use of amplitude. There's a false, well, even in the past, there was a complete reliance on amplitude to find hydrocarbon. And Shell fell into that trap in the good old days. And I recall that when Shell went to Angola, they drilled succession of wells that were dry, all because they were basing their predictions on amplitude. And then they had to come back, and that was the basis of setting up regional teams in all the opcos those days. It tells you that geology is fundamental to exploration. Geophysics is a tool that enhances, or rather points out clearly, a possibility of finding hydrocarbon, but the thought process to confirming that occurrence is based in geology. And I think it's important for us to always be aware of that, not just take your seismic, interpret it, and think that because you have a structure marked, you will find hydrocarbon. You have to put the geologic thought to it, and which is what you have tried to emphasize in this presentation. Thank you very much. I loved it.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I didn't read in full Professor Olayinka's comments. What he said was that the issue of well positioning leading to well failure may be partly addressed by higher institutions modifying and by ensuring that students take a course in Geographic Information System, GIS. This is a convenient time to take this on board as the National University Commission is undertaking a wholesale curriculum review. I personally agree completely with that suggestion, and I hope that the NUC will incorporate that in our curriculum for geology, for the study of geology. Anyone else? Let me scroll down.
Just to also portray what Prof. Olayinka is saying, I'm also aware that currently in Canada, if you are doing any course that has to do with earth or environmental science, they make it compulsory you do a GIS. I think
okay.
it's interesting. It is
absolutely.
very vital.
Yes, it is. It is. Then I have Elijah Njoku. The issue of well positioning can be a very serious one. Well mispositioning is not typically as a result of lack of adequately trained personnel in companies. Oftentimes, it's the result of loose sync between the explorationist and the GIS geoinformatic team. The sync can be strengthened to foster such potentially costly errors. I would agree. I mean, anywhere there's synergy, anywhere there's integration, anywhere there is a cohesive way of working together, it will enhance, it will not diminish the objective. Adedoja Ojelabi, good presentation, Segun. Well, very well, very apt case study. And KK's comment is right on point. Sometimes it's just a case of oil is where you find it. It's good to encourage geoscientists to integrate data properly to have a more robust interpretation and use historical information and analogs. Bimbo Durobiton, well done, sir. As one of the major risks, what can you say about timing of faults, propagation, and fault segment leakage?
Okay, so I was trying to avoid, which I said up front. So we all know the geology behind what could make it work and fail. So I didn't want to go into that detail. Remember in my general statement first, it is something has failed. What do we learn? How could we prevent? In another session, maybe I will make an attempt, or somebody else will surely make an attempt to tell you that relationship with examples. We have a lot of basic model things that we can use for that. But quite correct, those are very, very important data required to understand the hydrocarbon system before you drill a well. But it will be a different session entirely. I can't hear the person speaking.
I think he's done. I think we have a question from Oladipo. Oladipo, your hands are raised. So if you have the floor.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you so much for this insightful lecture. And it's a privilege to learn this and to hear from you, sir. I'm a student of the Federal University of Technology, Akure. I currently started my IT, my internship. And one of the things I've learned in the short while of internship is that whenever I want to drill, it's best we drill at the crest of our structure. And looking at 4 slides before the end of the lecture, I joined in quietly because I couldn't access the link that was sent to our SMS, but the secretariat was gracious enough to send us a Zoom link directly. But then I noticed that where we placed well A wasn't at the crest of that structure. So I want to ask what gave us confidence to drill at that point that wasn't at the crest of the structure that would suggest that we will still get as much hydrocarbon that we need to produce from that reservoir, sir?
Very good question. So I will quickly answer so that you don't go with the wrong. Going to the crest for Explorer is good because as Explorer, remember, our first job is to see whether there's hydrocarbon or not. So sometimes we just want to see whether there's hydrocarbon, so we go to the crest. But not necessarily may not be the best decision because sometimes you just don't want to see the crest. You want to see where's my contact. You want to see how much could it be. So being at the crest necessarily may not be the best option, but may be the quickest result for Explorer. Secondly, the example I showed, please be cautious, is a high pressure sequence. So it's not the normal conventional system that you probably are talking about. So that cross-section is looking at a high pressure system. Two of them are high pressure. And why we went to the other crest first is simple, is because, so when you look at it as individual prospects, each of them have different crests. So yes, you are right, actually, we went for the crest of the first structure. But when you step back and look at the total mega picture, the total structure has a different crest. But individually as prospect, I'm trying to go back to that slide. I don't know why. Hold on, please, so that I can. Yes, I'm almost there. Here you are. So this is the crest of this structure here because the fault is here. Then there is a saddle. So there's a big fault actually. So it's a crest, a saddle, and another crest. So technically, we still went for the crest somehow. But in the overall big structure, this was higher. Maybe it's serendipity that made us do this one first. And then we saw this as, okay, now we saw the down toe, and oh yes, so we want to actually see, let's use the second way to do test for the down to the real contact test. But the main answer to your question is yes, it is good to go for crest in exploration because you want to clean whether there's hydrocarbon or not first. So you minimize your risk of Arctic volume, as we call it in exploration, but may not necessarily give you the best result at the end of the day. Second, this example I'm showing is not coming from a conventional system. These are high pressure systems. And one school of thought is we are dealing with a valve relief kind of scenario, which I said I would discuss in detail I have to leave in 5 minutes, which I've started to discuss in details in our next part, because we think there's a valve release system coming into place here that made the left part protect the right part, but not today. So what you said is right. It's just that may not necessarily be the best thing to do. And again, this scenario is not a conventional delta. This is a high pressure system. I hope I've not confused the issue more.
Not at all, sir. Thank you very much for the clarification. Thank you so much, sir.
All right, I think we can wrap it up, the Q&A at this section.
Yes, the meeting starting in 5 minutes. Sorry. Please.
Okay, so quickly, in the tradition of Oka Owerri chapter of NAPI, I really want to thank the chairman, our own former president, and also the speaker. Very soon I will call in the president-elect to do justice to this. But before that, we usually give the presenter and the president a token. Now, what we have done, since it's virtual, we have forwarded to their email and also to their WhatsApp the certificate. Please, the speaker, acknowledge that you have received the certificate, and also our chairman.
No, I know I will receive it, definitely.
All right, the plaque is on transit.
Okay.
So you will get the plaque. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Please, on this ground, I would like to call in our president-elect, Mr. Ogujobi. Please, you have the floor.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Chigozie. Good afternoon, everyone on the call. And I would like to once again especially thank Segun Obilaja for granting us this thought-provoking technical presentation. I cannot agree less that majority of the listeners are already looking for the part 2. So that shows how insightful the presentation has been, and it's good for us to do a look back. And I think this is one of the ways we can look back. And I cannot agree less with Dr. Ejedawe. Geology is fundamental to finding hydrocarbon, but geophysics enhances the process of finding the hydrocarbon. So NAPE will continue to provide the platform for us to share ideas and knowledge on how to do our exploration activities better. I would like to thank everyone that have taken time to be here this afternoon. We've started very well in NAPE this year, providing platform for us to share ideas together. In January, we had Dr. Ladipo talking to us on the Cretaceous, and also that was thought-provoking as well, looking at all the emerging frontier of the Nigeria Cretaceous Reef Basin. And also in March, we've had a couple of technical talks as well. Yesterday, we had 2 technical sections, one in Port Harcourt and the other in Lagos. The one in Port Harcourt was using high fidelity OBM seismic data to unlock conventional near field exploration prospectivity in Nigeria shallow water offshore depth beds. We also have another one in Lagos that look at leading seismic with isometry, Pearl, and reveal. So all these are geared towards achieving one of the fundamental goals of our activities, which is to increase reserves. And I think the time to increase the national reserve is now, that is still relevant, and every exploration activities that we get towards the attainment of that novel objectives are highly welcome. So I want to thank everyone, and please look forward to more insightful technical presentation from all the chapters and also from NAPE Secretariat in Lagos. Having said that, I would like to recognize a few of our senior colleagues that are on the call today. First of all, let me thank the chairman, Mr. Abiodun Adesanya FNAPE, for sharing this afternoon's session. Thank you very much. We look forward to having you in some of our subsequent sections. So I have some senior NAPE member of the call. Let me recognize in no particular order Mrs. Adedoja Ojelabi, FNAPE, former NAPE president. We also have Mr. Alex Taka, FNAPE, also a former president. Professor Eniola, FNAPE, is also on the call. Thank you for coming. And we have Professor Layinka, former Vice Chancellor, University of Ibadan, also on the call. We have Professor Wajide, FNAPE, also on the call as well. Mr. Kanu, FNAPE, is equally on the call. Thank you for joining. Dr. Joseph Ejedawe, FNAPE, is equally on the call. Thank you. Dr. Beth Ozumba is also on the call. Dr. Joe Biton, FNAPE. Dr. Bat Ozumba is also FNAPE on the call. And we have Mr. John Bosco Uche, FNAPE, as well on the call. And from NAPE Executive, you guys saw the secretary, Dr. Emmanuel Majawa, equally on the call. So I want to thank everyone, those that have not mentioned your name, and all those that have mentioned your names. Thank you for joining NAPE in this technical session. I also thank you for the ESCO of the Oka Owerri chapter for bringing this insightful presentation. And I want to encourage everyone that we'll continue to do our best to create a platform where we can all share ideas together. Thank you, and have a wonderful afternoon. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much, my PE. Well appreciated. Good to also have you on the call. We acknowledge you. Thank you, sir. So, thank you. Before we go for lunch, Tunde, are you still on the slide? Just a quick announcement so that we close up here.
Okay.
Next slide, yeah. That's some closer remark, yeah. Next, yeah. Back. So going after this, by April, we should look at the Okowere chapter will be inaugurating a student chapter on the 27th. So look out for that. And we are looking at having a physical Zoom meeting for the first time this year. You can't afford to miss it. So also we have plans for virtual fieldwork, industry visits, some hands-on training for our students from industrial experts, and also some distinguished guest lecturer program. Try and register, try and update your membership. There is a chat there. We meet Abiyowa at the Secretariat. We will share the contact. Make sure you are up to date as a NAPE member so that you can fully enjoy this. Once again, thanks to everyone that made that time to enjoy this. You can enjoy your lunch. So before we close, I would like to call on the FinSec, if he's still on the call. I also want to thank all the ESCO. Yes, he's still there. Dr. Austin Okonkwo, please help round up with a closing prayer so we can go for our lunch.
Good afternoon, senior colleagues and colleagues. Yeah, thank you so much. Shall we pray? In Jesus' name. Father, Lord, we thank you for today's presentation from the Okowere chapter. Thank you for those that were on call to witness and to listen to today's presentation. Thank you for the presenter, Mr. Shegun, that gave us a very thought-provoking presentation. To you be all the glory in the name of Jesus. Lord, as we move, oh Father, for the rest of the day's activities, Lord, guide us, protect us, and all the glory be gone to you. In Jesus' mighty name we have prayed.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Amen and amen.
Yes, so it's time for networking. Oh, our Alex, good to have you on the call.
Yeah, I just want to especially use this opportunity to thank the speaker for today, the organizers, the ESCO of the chapter, the National ESCO, for putting this together. It's very exciting, very, very exciting, especially to those of us that have spent all our lives just doing this exploration. Yeah, very educated. We highly appreciate, and we're happy that we're being a part of this. Dim, we are going to get you into Abuja one of these days.
Thanks.
Yeah. You're going to get into Abuja. You will help us with some of this frontier work we're doing.
Thank you very much.
It's quite exciting. It's quite exciting. Yes, some of us have settled in Abuja.
Thank you very much.
We want to face the frontier.
Yeah.
So much pressure in Niger Delta. Yes.
Yeah.
It's very, very peaceful out here.
Yeah. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. We appreciate this.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate this. We'll be here to support you. and to make sure this charter grows.
Amen.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
My regards to everyone out there.
Appreciate it. Thanks too.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Yes. Dr.
Thank
Chima, thank you very much. Dr. George.
Thank you, Bible coordinator.
Dr. Oge.
Yeah, Bible coordinator, thank you.
Yes, sir. Is Sada still there?
Yeah, thank you, my coordinator. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chima. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Well
everyone.
done,
Yes, sir.
Chima, well done. Well done, my brother.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
How far now?
Well done. You know, say your
Yes, well
blessing.
done, Dr. Dave. Thank you very much.
Well done. Great job. Great job. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Do have a lovely afternoon. Cheers.
Thank you, you too. Bye.
Yeah, thank you.